Good morning, INTERWEB. Let's world build. In the last video, myself and Zidnaf decided upon my language's phonological inventory. In this video, I'm going to lay out a plan for how those various sounds will interact with one another. Basically, we're going to talk phonotactics. From the ancient Greek phone, meaning sound or voice, and tacticus, having to do with arranging, phonotactics sets restrictions on the possible sound sequences and syllable structures in a language. Hold on to your armchairs, folks. We're about to go down the rabbit hole. After much deliberation, I decided to make my language a CCVCCC language. What on earth does that mean, I hear you cry? To explain, words are made up of syllables. Syllables in turn are composed of three distinct segments: the onset, nucleus, and coda. For the most part, consonants can only appear at the onset and coda, and vowels only at the nucleus. In English, like in a lot of other languages, the nucleus is obligatory, whilst the onset and coda are optional. Check it out. I, in, mine, a, aft, craft, Minecraft. Now the nucleus and coda together form what's known as the rhyme. Cause if we hold the rhyme steady and switch out the onsets, we get, shock horror, something that rhymes. At a maximum, English allows up to 3 consonants to cluster at the onset and 5 to cluster at the coda. So it's therefore a CCCVCCCC language. Which is a lot. Nothing like the majestic Uwikyala mind, but certainly more than the minimalist inside me was willing to deal with. On the other hand, something simple like CV seemed a bit too restrictive, so I went with the moderately complex syllable structure of CCVCC. Phonotactical rule number 1, CCVCC. In the onset, I decided to allow all single consonant sounds, including the very un-English initial nga. I restricted all single consonants in the coda to everything except ha, ya, hwa, ra, and ra. Mainly because I found it really hard to easily and consistently pronounce words that finish with these sounds. So words like bran and hat would be totally permitted in my language, but nabr and tah would not. As for the nucleus, I decided to allow all vowels and all diphthongs. And just to take a step away from English, I'm also going to allow n as a syllabic consonant. Syllabic consonants are consonants, most often n, and that perform the role of vowel would in the syllable nucleus. Long story short, a word like pnt would be permitted in my language. Oh, and from the last video, I added in the requirement that the glottal stop must be positioned between 2 vowels. So, Rule 2, onset, everything. Rule 3, coda, no ha, ya, hwa, bra, and ra. Rule 4, nucleus, all vowels, all diphthongs, also n. And Rule 5, only intervocalic glottal stops. Like I said, I want my language to be, at maximum, a CCVCC language, so I needed to address the issue of consonant clustering. Straight off the bat, I decided that the glottal stop and hwa should not cluster. Rule 6, the glottal stop and hwa never cluster. Now, there's this thing called the sonority hierarchy, an ordered list of sounds based on how loud they are, least sonorous to most sonorous. Syllables, for the most part, tend to follow this kind of shape. The nucleus is the most sonorous part of the syllable, whilst the external segments taper off in volume. The English word trust is a good example of sonority hierarchy in action. I thought sticking to the sonority hierarchy would be a good idea, which meant that all my onset consonant clusters needed to increase in volume, and all my coda consonant clusters had to decrease in volume. I plotted these constraints in 2 separate spreadsheets, one for the onset and one for the coda, and quickly realised that further constraints were needed lest my language suffer death by clustering. After another bout of deliberation, I came up with the idea of only allowing obstruents to cluster with sonorants. That is to say, only plosives or fricatives can combine with semivowels, liquids, trills, and nasals. So a word like pra would be legal, but tapa wouldn't. Similarly, a word like kla would be permitted, but kva would not. The cool thing here is that this constraint brought my syllable structure closer to that of many Southeast Asian languages, where an optional semivowel or liquid known as the medial is inserted between the initial consonant and the nucleus. Only my syllable structure would look more like this, perhaps? I really like this mirroring effect, so back to the spreadsheets I went, inputted the clusters that met this constraint, and began systematically going through each and every sound, evaluating each in terms of difficulty and interest. As always, extreme cutting was inevitable, given my minimalist tendencies. The onset clusters ended up looking like this, and the coda ones like this. Rule 7. Onset clusters equal obstruent plus sonorant. Rule 8. Coda clusters equal sonorant plus obstruent. Now, I could totally have left things there, but I don't know, it all felt a little too inorganic and formulaic. I thought it prudent then to add in a handful of combinations that broke the sonority hierarchy, if for no other reason than to bamboozle future space linguists. Now, there's 3 main ways in which I thought I could shake things up a little. Plateaus, reversals, and just like random capricious insertions, which I'm not really a fan of, to be honest. Sonority plateaus occur when 2 sounds of similar sonority cluster, like a plosive and another plosive, for example. Think words like fact or apt. Reversals, on the other hand, turn the sonority hierarchy upside down. Examples in English would be words like spin, sky, axe, and hops, amongst others. So, back to the spreadsheets I went, inputted all the possible plateaus for both the onset and coda clusters, and again, systematically started evaluating and deleting sounds. At this stage, the onset clusters looked like this. I added in a couple of extra nasal clusters just because I liked the sound of them. And the coda clusters looked like this. In terms of reversals, I didn't want to do too much with these, so I just added spa, sta, and ska to the onset clusters and left it at that. And there you have it, one set of phonotactical constraints done. Good morning, INTERWEB. So it has been forever since the last video, and I am really sorry about that. Life of late has been pretty hectic and I had to put video making on the back burner, which sucks. But hopefully my schedule is going to free up now and I can get back into video making proper, which would be awesome. As most of you know, I have no formal training in linguistics. Everything I know about this topic comes from making these videos. So I would be genuinely curious to see what people think of my phonotactical constraints. Any and all feedback is welcome. Please throw it in the comments. Oh, and there's a few bits that I cut from this video for the sake of brevity that I am going to put in the description as additional footnotes if you want to check them out. As always, hit the links on screen or in the description for more Artifexian content. Like, and if you think I earned it, hit the subscribe button. Thank you all so much for watching. Edgar out.